All right, if you want to get in contact with us, our SMS line is 0477751358. You can like us on Facebook and listen to us online, www.phoenixfm.org.au. I've got two great guests coming up, Joe Milliken, who is a rock and music journalist, who's got a book out about Benjamin Orr, bass player of the Cars, and I'm also interviewing singer-songwriter Davis, who's got some gigs coming up at the Golden Vine, so stick around for that. But for now, some new music. I love this one. This is Duke Dumont and Red Light, Green Light. It is exactly 4:15. You're on Phoenix FM 106.7 with Miss M. And today on the program, as promised, I have the great pleasure of talking to Joe Milliken, author of Let's Go, a biography of the late and great singer and bass player of the Cars, Benjamin Orr. To talk about his new book and more, I have Joe on the line. Joe, welcome to Phoenix FM.
Hi, Miss M. Thanks a lot for having me. It's really great to be here.
It's a pleasure. Now, firstly, you've been a music journalist, editor and website publisher for 20 years. Who are some of your favourite interviewees of all time?
Oh, boy. That's an interesting question. I've done a few interviews along the way. I would have to say that one of my favorite interviews is with the drummer of Yes, Bill Bruford.
Yep.
Who is also a great progressive rock and jazz drummer. He's always been one of my favorites. And I've done a few along the way, but I'd have to say that interviewing Mr. Bruford was one of my favorites just because Yes is one of my favorite bands. I also did some interviews with the guys from Rush. I've talked to somebody from Pink Floyd. So I've done a few along the way, but I think Mr. Bruford might be my favorite just because Yes is one of my favorite bands.
Cool. Now, in 2014, you launched Standing Room Only, a website dedicated to promoting music, the arts and specialty food on both a local, and when I say local, I mean more your local, Boston, New England, and national level. Yep. Where can people find out more about this site?
Yeah, I launched that back in, I just celebrated my 5-year anniversary of Standing Room Only. And people can check that out at www.standingroomonly.info. And I do deal with local music on that website, but I also do national interviews as well. So it isn't just a website for people in the New England area. It's for everybody because I do national stuff as well on there.
Now, Joe, Let's Go is your first book. What was the inspiration behind writing a book about Benjamin Orr? Why did you choose him?
Well, believe it or not, it kind of happened by happenstance. I knew when I was ready to write my first book, because music is my passion, I knew that it was going to be music related, and I had a short list of ideas of things I was thinking about. And then one day, believe it or not, I got a call from a Cars fan who suggested that I write about Ben. So I wasn't sure if I wanted to write about Ben because I'm thinking, well, why wouldn't I just write about the band as a whole? Write about the Cars as a whole. But she said that I should investigate Ben individually, and I might think otherwise. So I investigated Ben as an individual, and I thought it was really interesting that he was born in Cleveland, Ohio, which is the home of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I also learned that at a very young age, he was in a band called the Grasshoppers,
yes.
And his band was on a local music TV show in Cleveland. And I thought to myself, well, here's a 17-year-old kid who is already on a TV show with his band years before he ever became famous with the Cars. And like I said, he was born in Cleveland, the home of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So I just thought it was an interesting story, and I thought that his story needed to be told. And that's kind of how I decided to write about Ben.
All right, now you got your information from a lot of sources. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, well, let me first say that it can be kind of difficult when you're writing about a person who's no longer with us, because unfortunately Mr. Orr passed away back in 2000 from pancreatic cancer, so obviously I could not interview the man himself. So what is the next best thing? The next best thing is to interview as many people as you can who knew him. So that's what I did. I started contacting people who knew him throughout his whole life, and it just kind of went on a rabbit trail from there. I would talk to somebody who knew him, and then they would tell me somebody else who knew him, and it would just go on and on and on, and I ended up interviewing over 120 people who knew Ben throughout his whole life. So those people that knew him well sort of became his voice. And that's sort of how I went about writing it.
Now, Joe, your book came out last year when the Cars were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Now, that must have been exciting.
That was really exciting. It was. I'd like to say that I timed it out that way, but it just kind of happened that way. And as a matter of fact, I was lucky enough to see the Cars get inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. My public relations coordinator, Donna Neal, and I got tickets for the ceremony, and I actually traveled from my home in Vermont and went to Cleveland and actually watched and saw the band get inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So that was a great thrill. And being there that weekend, the day before the ceremony, they have like a media day at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So Donna and I were able to go to that media day, and I got to do a whole bunch of radio interviews, and I did a TV interview. So I got to also promote the book on that day. So looking back now, it was a really fantastic memory and something I'll never forget.
It is 4:22 p.m. You're on Phoenix FM 106.7 with me, Miss M, and I'm talking to Joe Milliken, author of Let's Go, a biography of the late and great singer and bass player of the Cars, Ben Orr, and we're going to talk more about the book and more about the Cars and the life and times of the late and great Ben Orr. Right after this, we're going to play a song from the Cars. I love this track. This is Shake It Up. Back with us soon. That Shake It Up from the Cars, because I'm talking to Joe Milliken, author of Let's Go, a biography of the late and great singer and bass player of the Cars, Ben Orr, and we're actually going to hear a song a little bit later on called Drive, and that's a great song. It's actually my favourite Cars song, and the lyrics, I'm actually going to talk to Joe about that in just a minute and ask him his opinion on the lyrics. But before that, Joe, as you mentioned earlier, sadly Ben Orr was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in April 2000 and passed away on October 3rd of the same year, aged 53. What do you think his greatest achievement musically was?
Well, I would have to say that it is being a member of the Cars. You know, Ben was a musician his whole life. This is a guy who started playing drums when he was 5 or 6 years old, taking drum lessons. And he was a very versatile musician. I know that most people know of him as a bass player because he was a bassist with the Cars, but this guy could play anything. Like I said, he started out as a drummer when he was 6 years old. I mentioned the band The Grasshoppers that he was in when he was 17. He was a singer and a rhythm guitar player in that band. And if you talk to people in Cleveland who knew him when he was young, they actually know him as a guitar player before a bass player. And then he ended up turning to the bass when he was in the Cars. So Ben was the kind of guy that was so versatile as a musician that he could adapt his musical abilities to whatever his band needed. And I think that was one of his greatest achievements. He could do whatever his band needed. And it's unfortunate to say that he was not with us to be able to see it happen. But, you know, I would have to say that his band being elected to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I mean, how can you have a greater achievement than that, to have your band be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? And I also learned that he is only the second person from Cleveland to be elected into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. A gentleman by the name of Bobby Womack was elected to the Hall, and he's from Cleveland.
Cool.
So it was a real shining moment for Ben, even though he wasn't there physically. I know he was there in spirit, and I would have to say that being elected to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has to be his greatest achievement, even though he wasn't with us to see it himself.
Now, Joe, my favourite Cars song is Drive, and we'll hear that very soon. I love the lyrics. Who's going to pick you up when you fall? Who's going to hang it up when you call? Who's going to pay attention to your dreams? Who's going to plug their ears when you scream? Now, these lyrics have a real effect on me. What effect do these lyrics have on you?
Well, Drive is a pretty amazing song. It is the Cars' highest charting song. It's surprising that they never actually had a number one song, a number one hit in America, but Drive made it to number 3, so that's about as close as you can get to a number one song without having it. And Ben's vocal in that song is just legendary. It's one of the most beautiful vocals you'll ever hear. You know, an interesting point about that song, you know, Rick Ocasek of the Cars was the main lyricist of the band. He wrote all the lyrics to this song. And a little interesting fact about Drive is he actually wrote that song, and it was originally intended to be on one of his solo albums.
Right.
And for some reason, it got left off and wasn't included on the solo record that he put out. So it was sort of a leftover song for him. When the band got together to do an album, he brought that song into the band, into the studio, and Ben sang it, and that's how it became a Cars song. So I think it's kind of interesting and ironic that that song wasn't even originally intended to be for the Cars. But of course, once Ben got a hold of it in the studio and put his beautiful vocals to it, the rest, as they say, is history, right?
Absolutely. Now, I also like the video clip for Drive. It's one of my favourite clips of all time and is a fine example of the MTV age. Now, I often see it played on our answer to MTV. We've got a couple of shows. We've got Rage, The Loop and Video Hits. Now, Video Hits have often played it when they play their 80s special. What effect does this video clip have on you? Because I know it has a big effect on me.
Yeah, it's an amazing video. Another tidbit about the video, it was actually directed by the actor Timothy Hutton. So I thought that was an interesting thing. You know, it's kind of funny, even though, Rick's wife, supermodel Paulina, is in that video, and I actually kind of wish Ben was actually shown a little bit more in that video. I know it shows him at the beginning, and there's this classic scene where he's sitting in a bar room, sitting on a chair, and he starts singing. But then the video sort of turns to Rick and Paulina a lot, and not that I'm putting it down, because it's absolutely an incredible video. It's very well done. But I almost kind of wish that they showed Ben a little bit more in the video. But I love the classic black and white scene with Ben at the beginning, and obviously it's a very monumental video, and it was huge for the Cars because when that album came out, MTV was really exploding, and that was a big part of the Cars' popularity, was the fact that a lot of their videos were being shown. And obviously Drive is now considered a classic video, for sure. So it's very memorable video for me, for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, the breakdown in the relationship within the video is just heart-wrenching.
Yeah, it really is. Kind of gives you some food for thought. Gives you another interpretation of the video and the song. Kind of gives you a different perspective of it, if you will. Very haunting. And, of course, you know, I always look at Ben's vocal first and foremost in that song. And another interesting tidbit about that video is, well, actually the song itself, when they were in the studio recording that song, I was told by the drummer, David Robinson, when I interviewed him, that Ben actually went into the studio, went to record that song, and did it in one take.
Cool.
Ben was a smoker, so David described it as kind of a Frank Sinatra kind of scene. Put out his cigarette in the ashtray, went in the recording booth, did that whole vocal in one track, came back out, and it was done. Ben was so perfect. He was a one take kind of guy, and absolutely a legendary vocal for sure.
Yeah, well, the vocals are beautiful, certainly heart-wrenching, and like I said, it's definitely my favourite Cars song. It is 4:34 p.m. You're on Phoenix FM 106.7 with me, Miss M, and today I'm talking to Joe Milliken, who's got a new book out called Let's Go, a biography of the late and great singer and bass player of the Cars, Ben Orr, and we're talking about the book and more. But, Joe, apart from the Cars having a lasting impact on your life, who else has influenced you musically over the years?
Well, I guess that's kind of a broad question. I'm basically a classic rock kind of guy. I mean, I like all kinds of music. I love pop music. I love 80s music. I even delve into jazz a little bit, although I don't consider myself a jazz aficionado by any means. But I'm basically a classic rock kind of guy. I'm kind of like Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, The Doors, Rush, that kind of thing. My favorite band, sentimentally favorite band is Aerosmith. They were the first band I got into when I was 13 years old, and their guitar player, Joe Perry, is sort of my favorite artist, if you will. I kind of call Joe Perry my Elvis. And Aerosmith is, they're a sentimental favorite for me, too, because Aerosmith broke out of Boston, and Boston is my hometown. So they kind of have a special place in my heart as being my favorite band. But for the most part, I'm pretty much a classic rock kind of guy.
Yeah, well, I love Janie's Got a Gun and Lovin' an Elevator. I was in grade 6 when those songs came out.
Oh, yeah. Great stuff.
Now, if I was to ask you, who are you listening to at the moment? Like, who would be in your CD player or your iPod or MP3? Would it be the classic rock or would it be something else?
You know, if you talk to my kids, they tell me I'm stuck in the past too much. But I can't help it. You know, I'm not going to say I don't listen to anything that comes out now. But, you know, like I said, because I've always been a classic rock fan, and that's what makes me happiest, that's what I usually do. So when I get my iPod and I go out for a run in the afternoon, I have 500 or 600 songs, and most of them are classic rock. There's some pop in there, you know, a little Michael Jackson here and there, and a little bit of heavy metal, too. But I will admit, some people might find it boring that I don't listen to a lot of newer kind of stuff. But to me, you got to stick with what you love, and I'm a classic rock guy through and through. So I have to readily admit that is mostly what I listen to this day.
No, that's
boring
great.
or not, it's what I love. So that's what I play.
No, that's great, and I love the classics too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Now, you've got the book. What else is in store for us from you for the rest of 2019?
Well, the book came out last November, and Although, I mean, I am a freelance writer, but I don't necessarily do it full time. I also have another job. I work at a psychiatric hospital, so I do that as well. But I do my writing on the side. I write for a couple of newspapers. I write for a couple of music magazines and websites. The book came out in November. I've done a little bit of a book tour. I did a book event in Cleveland, which was Ben's hometown. So that was really exciting. I did one here in Vermont, where I live. And coming up in June, Donna and I are going to be going to Boston to do a book event, because Boston is where the Cars kind of broke out into the scene, and they actually owned a recording studio in the 80s in Boston. So in June, I'm going to be doing a Boston event. I'm going to be inviting a bunch of people that I interviewed for the book who live in the Boston area. So we're going to go down there and we're going to celebrate the book. And then from there, I'm probably going to think about what my next book is going to be. I don't have a definitive answer yet as to what it's going to be. I do know it'll be music related, so sometime this summer I'm going to start writing a new book, and I'll get that rolling. And in the meantime, I also, like I mentioned before, I have my standing room only website, so I continue to do interviews with musicians and artists, and that keeps me really busy. So that's what I'll be doing coming into the summer months.
Oh, well, look, I look forward to a new book, and definitely get your PR people to get in contact with me when it comes out, and we'll have to talk again.
Oh, I would love that, Miss M. I really appreciate you having me on the air. And like I said, I don't know exactly what it's going to be yet, but I know it'll be about music, so that'll give us a chance to talk again in the future, I hope.
Fantastic. Now, just finally, Joe, apart from the website we mentioned earlier, where else can people find out more about you?
Well, yep, we mentioned my website, which is standingroomonly.info. And I also want to let people know who may be interested in the book that it can be ordered online. You can go to the publisher of the book. The publisher is Roman and Littlefield, and their website is roman.com. So people can go there if they want to order the book. And it's also available on Amazon. You can just do a Google search for the book and find it. But Donna and I also created a website for the book. So people can go to my own website and get some information about the book and see some cool photos. And there's also a media page there that has a whole bunch of links to different interviews that I've done. And you and our interview will be on there once I get that interview link from you. Yep. I'll make sure that gets included so we can promote you. So people can go to my book website. It's really simple. www.benorbook.com, and people can go there and learn more about the book and order a copy there as well.
Fantastic. You're on Phoenix FM 106.7 with Miss M, and today on the program I've been talking to author and music journalist Joe Milliken. Joe has a new book out about the life and times of the late and great Ben Orr, singer and bass player of the Cars. Let's hear another track from the Cars. This is my favourite track, Drive, with Ben on lead vocals. And Joe, thanks so much for being on the program today.
Oh, Miss M, I can't thank you enough for having me on the air. And like I said, when I get my next book going, Don and I will be sure to get a hold of you so we can talk again. It's been a lot of fun.
Pleasure.